Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for coming to this seminar on SharePoint 2013, SharePoint Technologies, and also Office 365. Before we start, I'm going to ask a few questions. I just want to make sure I'm aware of the audience that we have. So if it's your first time at the IT conference, can I ask you to put your hand up, please? Right, okay, so that means every one of us are newbies, which is great. Okay, can I also ask if you've had experience with SharePoint, if you know what SharePoint is, if you've accessed it. I just want to be able to know how much time I can spend with everybody on the subject. So it's half and half. Some of us have, some of us haven't. Okay, great. Well, this session is going to be interactive. I'm going to be asking questions, and I'm going to try and make it fun as well, because I really don't want to drone on about so much technology for an hour and a half that we have. So just give you an agenda as to what we're going to do. I'm going to start off by introducing myself, telling you a bit about myself, what I do, and also, my life with SharePoint as well. And then I'm going to introduce to you what SharePoint is, SharePoint history as well. It'll be great for you to have an understanding of the subject itself, because I understand some people might be choosing to become SharePoint professionals. So I'm going to give you some history of SharePoint as well. We're also going to talk about SharePoint topologies, as in how SharePoint fits together with different servers, things like that, so you can have a proper understanding of the subject too. We're going to also look at SharePoint technologies. We're also going to look at SharePoint editions, as there are quite a few of them. We're also going to spend some time looking at SharePoint sites, also the business uses of SharePoint. And also at the end, we're going to look at the career prospects and the future of SharePoint. Hopefully that will, allow some of you, or even all of us, start a career in SharePoint for those of us who are not working in SharePoint at the moment. We're also going to spend time doing some case studies as well. Now, we might not be able to do this, but I'm going to try as much as possible to do it. It's basically me running and building some business applications on the fly with the time that we have. So let's kick it off with who am I? Who am I? A film that I watched once, just trying to give some ideas on this. A film about hackers, really. Who am I? But who exactly am I? Well, I'm a .NET software developer. You might ask, what is .NET? It's basically the programming language that Microsoft used to build a lot of their applications. So when you think about things like Windows, Word, things like that, the underlying technology is .NET. And I program in .NET, and I develop some applications in that as well. My special focus is on SharePoint Technologies, Microsoft SharePoint, and I've been doing that for some time now. I'm also known as a SharePoint Evangelist. In other words, I tell everyone about SharePoint. I try and sell it to everybody. If you speak to me about something, I will drop SharePoint in it at some stage. So in church settings you hear about evangelists. Well, I am the SharePoint Evangelist, and I try and take that gospel, good news of SharePoint to a lot of people that I meet. I'm also a Microsoft certified architect and developer in SharePoint 2010. You can catch me on my blog, sharepointlover.com. You can also tweet me at Yemi SharePoint, or you can catch me on LinkedIn as well. After this seminar, happy to continue a relationship with you on that basis. Also, I currently work for Microsoft in Dublin, helping them configure and build a SharePoint farm for the Bank of Ireland. So I spend a lot of time going back and forth to Dublin, working at Microsoft's head office. I've got 13 years of working on SharePoint for various clients. Clients that I've worked for include Accenture, Clarins, Vodafone, the NHS, EMC, Capita, Microsoft, which is also there, the British Antarctic Survey, Network Rail, the British Red Cross, Sir Robert McAlpine, an engineering firm, and of course Jesus House, as we are building a SharePoint infrastructure here too. When I worked for Network Rail, I was awarded the Golden Loco Award, which is basically an award that for people who have developed applications that have made difference to the transportation industry, I developed an application using Sharepoint Technologies called the Access Change Tool, which is used to manage rail access. So in other words, when you think of the trains that you take, when you leave here, because you've got several organizations that own those train companies, they can't just roll onto the train, onto the track. They need to have access to it. And in the past, what used to be done, believe it or not, was sending emails and Excel sheets to say, can we have access to the railway track? Well, I built an application that removed all of that, and it actually saved Network Rail about £55 million. So hence, that's why I was awarded that award, and quite proud of it too. So, enough of me. I think, exactly. So the topics of today, we're going to learn what SharePoint is about, the history of SharePoint, technologies, users of SharePoint, business benefits, career prospects, and also some case studies as well. So let's kick it off with what exactly is SharePoint? Trying to bring some humor into this. When you think of sharing, you've got two people trying to share a burger, and you've got Bill Clinton pointing at someone. But that's not exactly what SharePoint is. So SharePoint is a web-based platform for developing software applications. Software applications are things that we use in our day-to-day lives. Facebook can be described as a software application, Word, things like that. Anything that controls a piece of machinery, a process, anything like that is your software application. This computer that we're looking at, if it didn't have any software controlling things, it would be an empty box. So that's what a software application is. And you think of software applications, you think of things like human resources applications, when you get to work and you have to run a timesheet, those kind of things. They're things that you can build with SharePoint technologies. Also, SharePoint helps with project management. For those of us who are involved in project management, setting yourself tasks and goals, there are other facilities that allow you to do that as well. So you can build project lists, you can build calendars that can actually allow you to manage projects and also store documents as well. And that's one great thing that SharePoint does. It allows you to centralize documents. Now, a lot of us, when we use our computers, we type a Word document. We then save a document on this computer, and we're probably walking out of here. God forbid someone runs off with our laptops. We've lost the information. Your boss won't be happy. You've lost the data, and you could possibly lose your job as well. What SharePoint does is allow you to centralize that information, keep it secure, and allow several people to work on it at the same time. But there's much more that SharePoint can do for you. And we're going to go along with Microsoft's definition of what SharePoint is, and I'm going to kind of break it down as well. So Microsoft's definition is that SharePoint is a portal-based platform for collaboratively creating, managing, and sharing documents and web services. Does that mean anything to anybody? Does it, honestly? I think it's very vague if we're being honest. So let's break it down a bit. This is what Microsoft says. So if you look at what a portal is, for those of you who watch things like Star Trek, Star Wars, you probably hear the word of portal. And some people have come on a train today. Portal is any sort of avenue that allows you to get information in and out. Your website, your phone is a portal as well. So anything that allows that in and out movement electronically is a portal. But when we think of things of SharePoint, we're looking at website portals, intranet portals, web technologies where you can exchange data. So that's exactly what the portal stands for. Then the next thing is a platform. When we think of platform in general terms, we think of things like a train platform, a rails platform, this platform, as we can see here. But in terms of computing platforms, we're thinking of architecture, software that you can actually build another software application on. So back in the days of computing, like 25, 30 years ago, or I'd say 40 years ago, when you wanted to develop software, you would actually need to code it all the way from the beginning. For people in early days of computing, you would have used languages like COBOL and things like that. But a lot of that has changed now. So we're in an area of a time of rapid software development, whereby in order to produce code on time, you use an existing infrastructure and then build bits that you need on it. So that's essentially what a computing platform is. And SharePoint is a computing platform as well. A word that you come across with SharePoint quite a lot is collaboration, collaboratively, a bit of a tongue twister there. But in other words, working together. That is what people do when it comes to using SharePoint. People work jointly on a project. People don't work in silos. People share data, they share information, they share their knowledge, they share their expertise. And SharePoint actually allows you to do that. Hence, it's called SharePoint. So, not necessarily skydivers, jumping out of an aeroplane, but you get the idea that people need to work together. The last term there is web service. Now, that's really what SharePoint is, a collection of technologies, different technologies speaking together. But like I said, portal earlier on, one of the words that I mentioned is a web service. It's a service offered by an electronic device to any other electronic device communicating with each other via the World Wide Web. That's the general definition of what a web service is. On your mobile phone, you probably got web services that you do not realize are there. When you type your HTTP into your mobile phone to access a website, there's a web service that's allowing you to go to a server somewhere. So really, those are the underlying technologies of SharePoint itself. And when Microsoft do say it's a portal-based platform for collaboration and managing and sharing documents and web services, that's really what it is. So, the other things that SharePoint allows you to do is to create SharePoint portals. I spoke about portals earlier on, extranets, intranets. You can easily create them with SharePoint. And I don't want to keep on going too much about the technology itself, but I want to bring your minds to what you use on your everyday lives. So everybody here uses Facebook, yes? So when I say Facebook, really, I'm trying to point your minds to a general website that you can align, kind of get similarities to with SharePoint. So with SharePoint, you can build several intranet sites. You can actually build applications as well that can allow you to enhance your business. And the great thing with SharePoint is you don't actually need to have software coding knowledge to actually build these applications. Like I said earlier on, the whole idea is to use rapid software development techniques, and SharePoint does actually help with this. So the question is how? How does SharePoint do a lot of this? Well, I spoke about platforms earlier on. You've got platforms for websites. You've got rapid software development, which I said earlier on, rather than coding things from scratch. You can do you can meet business processes from rapid software development. You can work together, collaborate on projects. You can also search for a lot of data on SharePoint as well. Now, searching of data is a very important thing for the times that we're in. Everybody here uses Google search. When you want to find out where your plumber is, where do you go? Google. When you want to find out where Jesus' house is, I'm sure you entered Google. Everything is about searching for data, and SharePoint does a lot of this, and you can configure it to search a lot of data in your SharePoint infrastructure. I'll give you an example for a client that I worked with about 3 years ago. I won't mention the name, but we configured a SharePoint site for them. And the idea was to connect their SharePoint site with their hard drives. In other words, their network drives, but we'll call them hard drives. Now, the idea was that once SharePoint is connected to their drives, they'll be able to rapidly search for data. And because SharePoint's so good at doing this, we advised everyone at the time, please remove all of your personal data from those drives, because the company had kept data on there for 25 years. Some of it was not organized properly, but lo and behold, they didn't do it, and they told us that they had. So we connected the SharePoint's infrastructure to these drives, and guess what everybody, first of all, searched for? Pardon? I beg your pardon? Pictures, no? No? What's the first thing, if you knew that you had access to everybody's information, what's the first thing you'd look for? Exactly. So the first thing people did was, salary. And lo and behold, everybody's salary came up. And that caused a few resignations in the organization. So the power of information, the power of search, SharePoint's a great tool, but it's got to be used in the right way as well. Document management is important, and that's just an example of how you should manage your documents properly when you're using SharePoint. And because it has great capabilities of managing documents, it's being used in a lot of organizations. Mobile access as well. Now, there's been an improvement in mobile access. In the past, SharePoint wasn't a very good device for accessing information on your mobile devices, but they've improved that now, and a lot of clients, a lot of users are actually using mobile SharePoint and mobile resources at the same time. Integration. SharePoint is a Microsoft product, and a lot of the software that we use, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, email, all of those things are products that Microsoft built. So SharePoint does integrate very well with those products, and rather than you buy a product that you then have to now get so much problems to configure together, it's great that you've got one product whereby everything's syncing together and you're able to share so much information. I won't go into insights, but the idea really is that because you've got so much data in SharePoint, you can actually produce pie charts, scorecards, and things like that. So, going to cover SharePoint history, as SharePoint's been around for some time. So, SharePoint, the first time it got implemented, release was 1997, and it wasn't called SharePoint then. It was called Microsoft Site Server. In fact, you probably wouldn't have known it existed. It was just something that Microsoft gave to a number of users that were using Exchange at the time, something called Exchange. So this was the first release of SharePoint, and all you had was some sort of web content management part of it. You could share documents, and there was also an e-commerce server, which was in its early stages as well. In 2001, they released the SharePoint Portals server. Now, this is when things started to change. You had the introduction of web parts, whereby parts of SharePoint could actually be customized. Little applications could be built on the fly, and we're going to have a look at web parts as well. Now, to be honest, most of SharePoint actually took off in the year 2003 to 2007. A lot of organizations started using SharePoint, started adopting the technology. And in 2007, 2010, Microsoft Office SharePoint, which we call MOS, was introduced. And that is when a lot of organizations started buying into the concept of using SharePoint. You had things like blogs, Excel services, forms, submission forms. So when you fill out an electronic form, you type your name, address, and you press submit. That sort of technology was implemented into SharePoint as well. And search and a whole load of other things were built, which caused people to then really take SharePoint as an enterprise platform. Further developments have happened in SharePoint 2010. A lot of things have been changed on the front end. Browsers as well, because in the early days it was hard to actually use SharePoint properly with other browsers. So your Chromes, your Safaris, your Internet Explorers. Well, Internet Explorer was your default one, but there have been issues in the past where those browsers would not work properly. But a lot of advancement has been made, and SharePoint is at a stage whereby it competes very well with other enterprise platforms on the market. Current release of SharePoint is SharePoint 2016. It has been released for all to use, and people are still previewing it. The take-up hasn't been great. The reason for this is that people do not immediately go out and buy software. They tend to wait, as they say, sock 'em and see. But we know that people will start using it and downloading it and installing it. Okay, so I'm going to speak about SharePoint topologies. Now, this is a bit technical, and I'm going to try and go as slow as I can. But if you have got any questions, please ask me, and I'll try and answer them within the time that we have. Now, SharePoint really starts on the server infrastructure. However, there is a cloud version of SharePoint, and I'm going to try and explain as we go along the differences between them. But for now, I'm going to speak about the on-premises physical parts of SharePoint. So what you have are basically servers that you install SharePoint upon, and the main servers that you really have are your front-end web servers. You've got your your front-end web servers, you've got your database servers, and you've got your application servers. Now, I'll try and explain that to you. When you go onto a website, that page that you see is probably stored in a web server, just a page. The data that you enter, so your name, your address, things like that, is served in another server, and that's called a database server. Then you have an application server which controls the processes as well, things like that. And in a nutshell, that's how SharePoint is actually set up. You have this three-tier service whereby information is entered. Basically, the control of that information is on your web servers. It's quite, all of this is in logic, so I can't show you that per se, but really just understand that you have a three-tier technology in SharePoint. You've got your web servers, you've got your application, and you've got your database servers. You might ask, why are there three? It's so that so yeah, you can have a system that is, what's the word? That's balanced. So if you imagine if you were, I mean, there are some systems that allow you to load data on web servers, but you'll end up having contention. So if you imagine so much data and web pages being on the same system, it's going to end up causing issues. So what Microsoft have done is split the whole of that infrastructure. We're going to move on and speak about web applications. So when you create your SharePoint server, the first part that you will come across is the web application, and that's really the first, in layman terms, the first sort of application that you would build your SharePoint farm upon. I won't dwell too much into that itself. The main parts that we want to focus on is your site collection. Now, I've spoken about sites, so a site collection really is a collection of sites, several sites together, and in SharePoint you can have several site collections forming together, and below those sites you can actually have other sites as well. And you can have other and other and other sites. You can just basically have this top-down approach to sites. But the top level is really your site collection. And we do advise that when you build a SharePoint site, you split them into site collections so that you can manage your sites. Because if you had just all of your sites in one container and that container went down, what do you think will happen? Exactly, you lose your data, you cheese off your customers. So that's really the topology of SharePoint. So you have your site, so you've got your web application, then you've got your site collection, and you have your sites, and then it then breaks down into other parts like your lists, pages, the web pages, and also applications. Now you will hear about a list. This is something that you will always hear about. SharePoint stores its data in lists. Different kinds of lists. You have lists for documents, which are called document libraries. You've got lists for Excel sheets. Everything that you see on SharePoint is a list. That list is basically is the data. So we all use Excel, don't we? So if you imagine that a SharePoint list is an Excel page, but with a lot of more power. So all of your data actually gets stored on the SharePoint list. In other applications, when you build systems, you would store your data on a database. So you have your databases as well. But the way Microsoft have done this is that information should first of all be stored on a list, and that list is stored on a database. So you have that separation of layer with SharePoint services. You might ask, why do you want to do that? It just allows you to manage data well. And one question that you'll be asked what I must advise you also is that Microsoft does not support you actually doing any work on the database itself. They expect you to do everything that you do on the list. If you do access the database, you could void your warranty. Now, we're going to speak about SharePoint Technologies. I'm going to run through all of this because I want to get to the relevant parts of SharePoint to us all. So SharePoint is built around existing Microsoft technologies, as I said earlier on. So I spoke about a web server. The operating system for Microsoft, for SharePoint is actually Windows Server. It's something that you would hear about, Windows Server. For those of us who use laptops and things like that, we have Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. But for servers, we have Windows Server, Microsoft Windows Server. And I believe the current release is 2012. I believe that is the latest one. So all of the software, basically the applications, all of the servers are built and controlled by Windows Server itself. And the Windows Server the Windows Server itself is where your web server can be built on. You then also have the SQL Server. That is your database. I spoke about databases earlier on. The database infrastructure is built on Microsoft Windows Server, but we then install Microsoft SQL Server on it. So the server, you'll always have Windows Server there, but you will then build other things like Microsoft SQL Server to host your databases. So and that stores your data as well. And another server that we use is Exchange Server. Now, Exchange is for your emails. So because SharePoint does send a lot of emails back and forth, you need to have an Exchange Server for it as well. I'm not going to go into details of this. I just want you to have an understanding of those technologies that control SharePoint itself. So that's the server level. We're going to speak now about applications. In other words, doing stuff that you actually do with SharePoint itself. So the applications that you can use to design and develop things in SharePoint, there are quite a few of them, but the easiest one that comes to mind is SharePoint Designer. Now you can use this to customize web pages. You can use it to manipulate your data as well. So many things that you can do with SharePoint Designer, and it's one of the core applications that you need for developing web pages and things like that. Another application is InfoPath Forms, and you can use that to build little applications. Although we understand this is being phased out, but Microsoft haven't made their minds up about it. But it's a great application to use. I've used it to build submission forms. I've used it to build HR systems. I've used it to build entry systems as well. So there's so many things that you can do with InfoPath Forms. You can actually build an application in a day. It's a great tool to have, and it's one that I'd advise you to get some knowledge on. Visual Studio is what we call the creme de la creme of software development. It's where you build solutions. It's where you write C# code, things that whereby you want to tear SharePoint up and actually customize it, write solutions and features. I won't go into much of this here, but unless you're at a kind of experienced and professional level, you won't really need to concern yourself with Visual Studio. The main applications I would recommend are SharePoint Designer and and InfoPath. So we're going to go into SharePoint editions as well. There are a number of editions for SharePoint. The first one on a server base is the SharePoint Foundation. That is free, so you can actually download it and install it on a web server for free. But it doesn't mean you'll be able to do that straight away. They say it's free, but things like SQL Server are not free. So, but yes, they do offer it for free to charities like ourselves. The other one is, it then goes up to SharePoint Standard, whereby it gives you more features. It's not free, you've got to pay for it. And then there's a SharePoint Enterprise, which is the top level where you get so many other functions. You get Yammer, you get, you've got a lot of functions on that one, and there's just too much to explain with the time that we have. But what I would say is when you look at those, these versions of SharePoint, they are all on-premises versions of SharePoint. And when I mean on-premise, it means I've got a server here. I've got a box with SharePoint installed on it. There's another release of SharePoint now called SharePoint Online. Now that is the cloud offering of SharePoint. Do we all understand what cloud offerings are? If not, please let me know. Cloud, does everybody know what cloud is? Okay, I know you do. But really and truly, cloud has been with us. I know the term cloud has come about, has gained a lot of prominence in the last 10 years, but it's really been with us. We've always sent emails, you know, so it's any time that we haven't got a physical device to get our hands onto when we, in terms of the data, in terms of our web server, when we're accessing it remotely, then that's data in the cloud. So Microsoft offers SharePoint in the cloud, meaning that you don't actually need to have a SharePoint box. Now, before this offering was available, I would actually, in my home, I had several SharePoint servers when I used to do a lot of SharePoint work. So my wife wasn't too happy about that because I'd have about four servers about this big, whereby I've installed all of those servers on. But now I don't need to do that because I can access SharePoint in the cloud. So my servers are going for sale if anybody's interested in them. But you can actually do, sorry. Yes. Okay, so the SharePoint Foundation is the one you can download for free. But when you download it, you need to install it on servers. You can actually get virtual servers as well, and I'll speak about that in a few moments. The other ones are not free. You've got to pay for them. And the licenses are about £3,000 to £4,000. But the Foundation one is free. But at the same time, you will still need to pay for other things. So there's the SQL server. I don't believe that is free. Exchange is not free as well. Well, the main one you will need is SQL Server, and you'd need to pay for that. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay.
Yeah, Foundation is free. SQL Server is not free. But then, if it's for maybe testing purpose you want to play with, I think you can go with the evaluation copy of SQL Server, which would last for about 180 days.
180 days, you are absolutely right. Thank you very much. Thank you. He's absolutely right on that. So, I mean, and there's some other things that you can do as well in terms of evaluation purposes. So with SharePoint, you can, and I'll come on to that, you can virtualize your environments. Now, I spoke about having 4 servers earlier on. You can actually have those servers in one server, and that server itself is a virtual server. In other words, it's a server running on a hard disk. And it kind of makes things a lot more easier. It's a bit complicated to explain here, but what he said is right. You can get evaluation copies, and after your 180 days, you'd either have to buy them or deinstall them or look for some other way to get around it. But let's focus on SharePoint Online, because that's really where a lot of difference has been made now. In other words, I can set up SharePoint in 5 minutes. All I need to do is go online, register with Microsoft, and I'll have a SharePoint system straight out like that with no configurations. Now, this actually has made a lot of difference, because in the past, to configure and configure a SharePoint site would normally take close to 2-3 days if you were going to do it properly. You can rush and do it in a day. But can you, I mean, bearing in mind that you can actually now build this infrastructure in 5 minutes, that has completely made a difference and changed the way things are done with SharePoint. It allows some of us to now learn about SharePoint. It allows us to, discover other parts of SharePoint without actually having a physical box. And this is something that I'm hoping some of you will be able to do as well. The other thing is that it's allowed charities like ourselves to actually adopt SharePoint. So we here in Jesus House, we are putting together a SharePoint system based on SharePoint Online. And we did have an on-premise SharePoint, but we realized that it was going to cost us a lot to manage SharePoint on-premise, because when you install SharePoint, you need to manage it as well. Now we don't have to manage it because Microsoft do the management for us by using SharePoint Online. So those are the additions that you have. You have on-prem and also SharePoint Online. And the use is quite similar. A lot of things that you find online are on-prem. But we've noticed that Microsoft are actually focusing a lot of their development online as opposed to on-premise, because it's easier to set up and they want to compete with the likes of Google and other web providers out there. So we're going to have a look at the various SharePoint sites that you can have when you configure SharePoint. Sorry, bear with me for a moment. So what exactly is a SharePoint site? And a SharePoint site really is a website. Or we could say the term site instead of website, because if it's a website, that means it's available on the internet. But it's really a site, a web page with different capabilities like web parts. So you have web parts like document libraries, you have calendars. A document library is basically a functionality on SharePoint that you can add onto a page of SharePoint without doing any coding, and you'll be able to upload your documents into it. I'll show that to you later on. A calendar, team calendars, we use them in SharePoint. So on your phone, you've got calendars, haven't you? Imagine if you had on your iPhones, on your iPads, all these other devices have calendars. Those calendars are unique to you. But imagine if we were all in a team here and I wanted everybody to know that this IT conference was happening today. I'd share a calendar somewhere, wouldn't I? And I'd give all of you access to that calendar, and then we'll be able to collaborate and know what's happening on a certain period. Or you'll be able to tell me, oh, sorry, I'm going on holiday at this particular time. So those are the benefits of using calendars in SharePoint. You can also do tasks as well. Now imagine in project management whereby your manager tells you to complete a certain task at a particular time. You just say yes, there's no record of it, or you've written it on a post-it note, the kind of things that we do. With SharePoint, we can actually set ourselves tasks, we can set ourselves goals, and we can actually configure the system so it alerts us to say, hey, you haven't completed this task at a certain time. So those are the things that you can rapidly develop in SharePoint. And the SharePoint site you can add as many pages as you want. There aren't any limits to the pages that you can have in SharePoint sites as well. Now, there are several kinds of SharePoint sites that you have in SharePoint itself. You can have the team site, you can have project site, community sites, document centers, and also record centers. There are so many other team sites, but I'm going to focus mainly on these ones because of the time. So team site really is the most popular site that most people use. You use it for organizing information. So imagine this SharePoint team that we're in now. We could actually form a team and basically build a site based on the team. We could call it the JH SharePoint Conference team. Build a site based on that, and you'd have things like calendars, tasks that all of us can complete in a particular time. You've got the project site as well. If you're managing a project, if you're trying to share ideas, share tasks with people, you can easily configure a project site. You can also create a community site. Communities have really become a big thing in the last 10 years because of social media like Facebook. So rather than sending emails back and forth to people that you want to interact with, you can actually have a community site on SharePoint, and you can share ideas and search for information as well. Document Center is a great thing that SharePoint allows you to do, where you can upload information, upload documents, share documents with people, rather than emailing those things to people. I'm sure a lot of us do this, and I've done it. When you want to share a document with someone, mostly you get an attachment, don't you? Yeah. You do it as an attachment. You send it to that person. What do you think then happens afterwards? They can't retain it. They can't get back to it. So your boss says, oh, can you get me that document you emailed to BC 3 or 4 years ago? You're thinking, what document? You probably start looking for it because you're not centralizing your data. So SharePoint allows you to do this. You can have Document Center for documenting information. You can also version control information. Version controlling is when you set a version of a document. So when you create a document, and you want to create another copy, what do? You do V2, don't you? Yeah. Version 2, things like that. And then you find out you got version 100 and your hard drive is full up and you don't even know what version 100 contains. SharePoint has automatic versioning functions whereby when you edit a document, it will create another version for you automatically. You set it up to do that. The other thing that SharePoint has is the record center. Now, what exactly is a record? A record is a legal document. Now, you could upload a document and I could just call it, okay, Yemi's document. But that doesn't mean anything really. But if I identify that document with a record number, then it becomes a record. So if I call that document, if it had an ID like 500.111 and that ID was relevant to the organization can then store that document as a record, and there are legal requirements for doing that as well. So SharePoint does help with a lot of that. And these are just generally what the team site looks like. The project site has this sort of layout with project tasks. The community site, similar to what you have here, you've got what's happening on the right-hand side, and you've got other things where people at the bottom can have discussions as well. Then you've also got a document center, like I explained, where users can keep documents, upload documents, and share documents, and then you've got the record center as well. So these are the different sites that you can create in SharePoint. So going to come over to rapid software development, web apps, client solutions. In other words, I said earlier on that SharePoint is an application development platform, and it really helps you develop applications. So your manager, I mean, I've been in places whereby companies are about to spend a whole load of money on developing a system, and I've said, why don't you just do this and that in SharePoint? And I've been able to deliver it in less than a week. That's helped me, it's helped the organization, and it's something that a lot of people are trying to do now, develop rapid applications and not spend so much time doing a lot of coding on them. Just a bit of a brain teaser on this one. So this image says, Daddy, just a minute. I mean, for those of you who have children, I'm sure you've heard your child ask you, Daddy, just a minute. Daddy, just a minute. Daddy, just a minute. And Daddy, what does this button do? And as you can see, they've got a black screen. In other words, they've lost their work. But what I was going to say was that one great thing about SharePoint is it has auto-saving features. So even when you're online, you can configure it like that it will continue to save your documents, save every edit that you make so you don't lose your data and be like this poor gentleman here. So rapid software development, and as an application development platform, SharePoint is well suited in supporting rapid software application development. You can develop applications so quick, it's unbelievable. And sometimes you might think developing an application means you code something from the scratch. You'll find out that a lot of people are not speaking to you about building a Facebook or building your a WhatsApp or something like that. They just need a business need to be met at that particular time. I'm not always finding clients asking me, oh, can you build something to fly to the moon? It's, I need something to meet my business requirement. So SharePoint helps with that, and you have components in SharePoint that can be rapidly customized to meet business requirements of organizations. So you have things like team calendars, you have task lists, web apps as well, which can be built according to what the end users want. And a lot of these web parts, existing systems, can be further customized with code for those of you who may want to go into coding. These applications can be further developed. Now, I'm going to make a little explanation about some of the coding elements of SharePoint. So historically, most of the SharePoint coding has been what we call server-side code. In other words, I'll try and explain this. I spoke about servers earlier on, didn't I? So you've got your web page, and then you've got your data in the database, and you've got server. Now, if I want the web page to do something differently, i.e. I wanted it to, so let's give this example. I press a button on a web page, and I want it to tell me, yes, you've pressed that button. In order for that to happen, I need to do something to SharePoint. To do something to SharePoint, I have to do it on the server. The problem with that is my manager might say, I don't want you messing around with a server because you might break it. So what Microsoft have done recently is focus a lot of development on what we call front-end code. In other words, rather than you making changes to the server, you make development changes to the page. So that's the direction that Microsoft is going in. It's called front-end code, and you would have heard these terms like JavaScript, jQuery, Angular, things like that. That's the direction that Microsoft is going in because they don't want people actually making changes to the server. Is that kind of clear with anybody? Please, if it's not, please let me know.
Basically, if they are trying to upgrade an application, like, for example, like error message,
yes.
Instead of going to the server, they can actually do that on the front end.
Exactly, exactly. And that's really it. So there's so many things now that you can do on the front, on the page itself, that you don't have to do on the server anymore. And because you remember I spoke about SharePoint Online as opposed to on-premise? Yes, exactly. So Microsoft are not going to allow you to go into their servers to make any changes. Well, to a certain degree they will. But the majority of changes they're expecting you to do now is on the front end. And because front-end code is actually easier than server-side code, it allows us to develop applications more rapidly as well. Okay, let's leave that part. I do not have to explain, but let's go into other things. So another word that is mentioned a lot is the word collaboration with SharePoint. So what is collaboration? Companies are using SharePoint to improve employee collaboration and interactions. So you have web pages like this. In SharePoint, you have a Delve page, which is like your own Facebook page as well, but more of a corporate Facebook. And they've actually got this tool called Yammer as well. Now, Yammer was a service that was produced by another organization. SharePoint liked it and they bought it. And to be honest, it's similar to Facebook, except I'd say it's about 60% close enough to the corporate Facebook. And you can do things like liking comments. There's a limit to how much you can share, so you can't do all of the other things like you're live on Facebook, but it's really for you to be able to exchange ideas with people that you work with in a corporate setting. And the great thing with SharePoint is that you can sign in, log in from any device, so your mobile device. I can log into my SharePoint site at work. I don't have to take my laptop at work home with me. I can just go and use my computer at the one I have at home and connect to a SharePoint site. So that's really a great thing as well. I'm going to speak briefly on Office 365, and I'm going to explain how it interacts with SharePoint, but I'm not going to dwell a lot on it because of time. Now, basically what Office 365 is a package of applications that Microsoft have basically logged up together in order to present it to you so you can, get tied into their products. So they have things like your Outlook. They have a calendar. They have a people search, so you can search for your friends, family, if you have them on the system. They have a Yammer that I spoke to. They have OneDrive. Does anybody here use Hotmail or Outlook? Okay, we do. So are you aware of OneDrive? Yeah. Okay. Does it work? I don't think so. As far as I know, it's the best thing since sliced bread, but I'll say that anyway. I mean, if you compare it to the other one, Dropbox, thank you, yes. So Dropbox have now got a competition from, is more, okay, all right. That's correct. Yes. So when they started that, it was unlimited, and then everyone suddenly put all of their files and records on there, and they woke up. So really and truly, but it's a good. I mean, the fact that you're not paying for it, you're getting about 5 gig, I believe, is still helpful. And the other thing is you can store so many things on there. You get Office as well. I'm sure you get the web apps that you can use to edit your documents. So you get Word, you get PowerPoint, you get Excel, web version. So there are benefits to using it. But when you use SharePoint, there are other things that, when you use Office 365, there are other things that you have. So you have, I think I'm going to try and use this pointer if it works. Right, yeah. So you have things like Delve, which is your personal site. You've got videos as well. So you know your YouTube videos, you can actually upload them and share them corporately with people as well. And not just link to YouTube, you can actually upload corporate videos as well. I spoke about Excel, but really and truly, these are applications that when you sign up for Office 365, if you choose to, you get them and you can use them to your advantage as well. But the main driver on Office 365 is SharePoint itself, and it's just bundled together with those packages. So let's move on. Other uses of SharePoint. Enterprise and document management, so organizations can use it to share their documents. Personal cloud, I spoke about OneDrive, where you can store information in the cloud. Intranet, you can use it as an intranet, and that's what we are going to be using SharePoint for here in Jesus House. Extranet, does anybody know what an extranet is? Okay, all right. Basically, you've got, okay, I don't think I explained this before. So you've got your internet, you've got your intranet, and you've got your extranet. So your intranet, you can really say, is a system that is confined to a certain group of people. So we could build a SharePoint site here and say, okay, only everyone in this room will use it. So we're confined to the use here. Now, extranet could be, let's just say, for instance, the other team that are in the worship center are located at some other location out of this building, but we still wanted to give them access to it. That's what, so that becomes the extranet of our intranet.
So when you build a SharePoint area and you give access to the third party,
yes,
to view files and stuff, what is that?
It's really file sharing, but when it's in terms of site. So if you are sharing a site and that site became available for those third parties who do not actually have an account with you, then or they are what we call partners, then that's where the term extranet comes into it. To be honest, it's becoming blurred nowadays, because just like the example you gave about sharing, if you share a file, in effect, it's becoming that.
Is it basically like an API where a company, like you said, third party connects to your own platform?
I wouldn't call it an API. It's more of giving a service to other users. I wouldn't use the term API. For those who don't know, an API is an application programming interface. Okay. Right. Search as well. I gave you the example of search as well, so we won't go too much into that. And I've covered this as well. You can rapidly develop applications. So I'm going to move quick because I really want to try and see how we develop those applications today. So this is the interface that you have with document management, whereby you can share documents, you can manage them in your document center, which files can be migrated and centralized as well. And the whole idea is be able to centralize your documents in SharePoint rather than have them sitting on your laptop or some other place that no one can access. Okay, personal cloud I spoke about earlier on. So this is a sort of personal cloud that you have, your Delve. Delve is basically your own personal site, so you can upload documents there, you can customize it, you can upload videos, upload documents. It's really what you do with Facebook, but from a corporate level. So that's what your profile page is. And you also have the OneDrive in your profile page as well. Okay, moving on, intranet and a corporate social network website. You can build a company intranet with SharePoint, and a lot of organizations do that. We here at Jesus House are doing that as well. And you have your extranet as well, whereby you can share ideas, share information with external people who do not actually belong to your organization. Search is a great functionality in SharePoint. You can, once you've configured it correctly, you can search data that is within SharePoint, and also search data that is on other proprietary systems. So systems like SAP, other database systems as well can be connected to SharePoint. Sorry, I said SAP. SAP is another platform delivered by another organization. So you can connect other systems and search for that data. And you can also search data from your hard drives. There's so many, as long as you can connect to something, then what SharePoint will do is crawl that data and make it available for you and your team. And then you've got the software development framework. Now, these are the kind of applications that you can develop in SharePoint. So you've got pie charts, you've got scorecards as well, dashboards that you can use to display your data. So like I said to you earlier on, if you do go into organizations, not all of them are going to expect you to build you know, something that controls your washing machine or anything like that. They're looking for applications like this to meet a need. Okay, I'm going to speak about career prospects in SharePoint. We're almost coming to the end. So the stats at the moment are that over 78% of Fortune 500 companies in America use SharePoint in 2011, and that number continues to grow. The reason why it's growing is just historically, Microsoft had a great lock on all of the companies. So I'm sure everywhere you've gone to, you found Windows, haven't you? Everybody, when you go to an organization, is Windows. Yes, Google have tried to do all they can. Linux have tried to do that as well, but people are more comfortable with what has worked for the last 25 years. And also even Apple as well. People are using Apple laptops and things like that, but for now, Windows are still going to be the dominant force when it comes to business office systems, whether we like it or not. The other thing I was going to say is that architect and administrator roles are at risk with, or maybe at risk with, SharePoint and Office 365. Does anybody have an idea why? Okay. Because of SharePoint Online. That's correct. So in the past, I would be with a SharePoint server, and I'd go and work for an organization, and they'll say, okay, fix our servers. Most of those organizations have now gone to Office 365, so my job is at risk, basically. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you are thinking of going into SharePoint, you might want to consider the development route. Now, some organizations are still going to have servers, so places like banks, defense, airports. There's some organizations that do not want their data in the cloud. For instance, here in Jesus House, initially, we resisted this because we did not want our data to be stored in America. And although the data center for Microsoft is now in Dublin, but we've kind of just thought, okay, there isn't that much of a risk. So that's why we've made that decision as well. The demand for SharePoint workers continues to grow. There is, there are not enough SharePoint skilled workers. In other words, Microsoft released this product and there wasn't a proper end-to-end training of how to use SharePoint, how to learn it. Books are being produced, but unlike other applications where you go to learn, there isn't a SharePoint school. That's what I'm trying to say. There isn't a university of SharePoint. So a lot of people have self-taught themselves. A lot of people have learned. Some people are sponsored by their companies. And because there's that shortage, there is a demand. And because now the platform is at a stage whereby it competes with a lot of other systems, a lot of recruiters are finding it hard to get the right people. Yes, sir?
Documents onto SharePoint.
Yes. No, that's not what I mean. So you have your end users, people who would use the documents or upload documents. I'd like to call them. I won't call. Okay, let's just call them workers anyway. But then you would have developers, administrators, business users, business analysts, people who would develop the system, people who would find out what a company would need in order for SharePoint to become available. So that's where that demand is, because not a lot of people know about SharePoint. A lot of people are now, but there's still a need. Because like I said, you can set up a SharePoint environment in 5 minutes, but you may not necessarily know how to use it. So a manager might just say, oh, or someone might just say, oh, okay. Someone like me might just say, why don't you buy SharePoint? And they'll buy it. And they say, what am I going to do with it? So that's why there is a need. So typical SharePoint roles, and this will lead on to your question that you asked me, sir. You've got the SharePoint architect. SharePoint architects are people who basically build the SharePoint solution. They say how many servers are going to be configured. They go into an organization and find out what that organization needs. Really solution architect, we call them that as well. And they basically look at the organization, they come and recommend what should be built for them with SharePoint. So very expert, because to be a solution expert, to be a SharePoint architect, you need to know everything about SharePoint. You need to know about Exchange, the web server. You need to know about the database level. There's so much. You need to know about network topologies. Basically, you need to know a lot. So we call them the gurus of SharePoint. Then you have a SharePoint programmer. SharePoint programmer is somebody who writes code. They write things in C#. They write things in JavaScript. All they see is noughts and ones, code, basically. So they are expert. Has anybody written any code here? Has anybody in any language? Okay, so we have our experts behind us there. Please speak to them afterwards. I'm sure they'll give you some information on that. But coding is a great thing to do. And you probably have heard that Mark Zuckerberg, and I learned about this, went into Nigeria, where my folks are from, and has invested in one of the development communities in Nigeria, simply because there are not enough of people in America to code the kind of solutions that he needs. So coding is the way forward. And if you'd like to get into coding, I'd encourage you to do it. And I'm encouraging my children to do it at the moment. Okay, SharePoint Developer. Now, this is where the majority of us will find ourselves. We're people that may not code or have some idea of coding, but we're using existing applications to meet a business need. That's where the majority of us are going to be. And that's where the majority of the jobs are as well. So companies may say, I need an intranet site with SharePoint on. A manager's not going to always want to do that. They may just want somebody to add the web parts in and do things like that. That's where those jobs are. And I'd encourage you to have a look into that. You also have SharePoint Testers as well. And a SharePoint tester, a great role, because in as much as a SharePoint application is great, if you configure it incorrectly, or you don't configure it in the way that your manager or whoever is hiring you to do it, they won't be happy with what you've delivered. So hence, a SharePoint tester's role is crucial in them ensuring that the system performs in the way it's meant to. It's really needed, and it's a role that is essential to the industry as well. So that's something that you might want to consider getting into. SharePoint Administrator, it's a great role, but I can't recommend anybody does that at this current time. However, if you want to go into SharePoint administration, you're welcome to. But I must say that it involves you building servers, configuring the SharePoint environment right from scratch. I'm convinced that these roles will diminish in the next 10 years. So I'd think carefully before you go on that path. SharePoint Business Analyst is a great role to get involved in as well. What does a business analyst do? You go to a customer. I gave you an example of building a SharePoint site earlier on. You find out exactly what they need. You want a SharePoint site, you want it red, you want it yellow, do you want it green? Do you want the task calendar to be here? Why do you want a task calendar? What do you want to use it for? Why don't you use a document library instead? Those are the kind of questions that a SharePoint business analyst will be asking the business requirement owner. It's a great role to do as well, but you would need to have an understanding of SharePoint from a top level. You don't have to understand the coding behind it. Really what you're focusing on is things like web parts, web pages, how many sites, and there is a demand for that as well. Pardon? Yes, you do understand. You do need to understand the topology of SharePoint. That's correct, yes. Okay, SharePoint Program Manager, Director. These are the big shots, the people who oversee a SharePoint project. They control the budget. They control, the deployment. They oversee everybody, basically. They don't necessarily have to have technical knowledge. They basically understand that they understand the business need, and they basically integrate all of these other roles to ensure that business need is met. It's a great role if you've done project management, you've managed large, they don't necessarily have to be IT projects, but as long as you can manage large projects, this is something that you want to consider doing. And project manager likewise as well. That's someone who's a step below the program manager. So consider this as well. It certainly would help your career. And SharePoint Consultant is someone like myself who does everything. So programs, architects, tests. I think I've done almost various roles in SharePoint. And we basically don't fit in a box. We basically do take anything that's coming that we are able to do. Some people would say a jack of all trades, but that's not necessarily the case. It just means that we've basically worked in SharePoint and we've spent those of years doing it as well. And there's a SharePoint trainer, someone who trains people on how to use SharePoint. This is a great role to get involved in. I did say earlier on that there are not enough SharePoint experts out there, and somebody has to go out and train those people. Now, the majority of people that you'll be training, you won't be training the developers or programmers, you'll be training end users. So there is a need for that. So if you've had teaching experience, if you've taught people, if you know how to explain things in detail, then I'd encourage you to, grab a book on SharePoint, learn about the front end, how it works, and look for a role in that. There's a SharePoint Superuser as well. This is somebody that basically looks, has an oversight on how SharePoint should actually work. The role is similar to a SharePoint architect, but they're more people-facing as well. So, right, we're going to do case studies. I just need to look at the time. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just want to make some points and observation based on these roles.
Okay.
If you look at the SharePoint Developer role and the SharePoint Administrator, you'll realize that these days, when recruiters put this job description out there, say, okay, I'm looking for a SharePoint Administrator, if you look into details, you see that this probably is a SharePoint Developer role. And when they put SharePoint Developer out there as well, if you look at what it entails, you see like managing server, creating users, which is actually a SharePoint administrator. So what I would advise is if you're looking for SharePoint role and you see probably a SharePoint administrator, don't just say, oh no, I'm looking for a developer. Try and go into details, because most times you find out that these roles, most of the recruiters don't even know what it entails.
Absolutely.
So they just say, oh, SharePoint developer. But if you look deep inside, it might just be an administrator role. Because for me, I think I'd actually made that mistake in the past, where I was actually looking at getting a SharePoint administrator role, but on getting to the final stage, I realized that this is actually a core development, which is not what I used to do then. So when you look into more details, you probably find out that most of these roles, they actually, they use the word wrongly.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right on that and spot on. Thank you very much. You will find out not even just the recruiters, even the managers will do that wrong as well. So some managers will say, oh, we need a SharePoint developer. And really, they it's nice. It's your one. Yeah. It's yours. Okay, I'm sure that kept us awake anyway. So a lot of the recruiters and managers don't actually know. Some of them say, oh, I need a SharePoint administrator. And many times, yes, it's the developer role. So what I would say is, just like what Mario says, find out. You do your own research. Find out exactly what is needed from that role and see where you fit in as well. Okay, so before we go into our case studies, I'm going to shift forward just for a second, because I want to go back. I want to move to these aren't my final words, but it's to do with in terms of your career as well. So in terms of career advancement, my recommendations to you are for you to subscribe to Office 365 if you want to pursue a career in SharePoint. The reason I say this is that you might as well get used to using the tool, building a few SharePoint sites, have a bit of an understanding of it. It's not as complicated as it used to be, and Microsoft have actually done a lot to make it easier. So try and do as much as you can to subscribe to it. I believe the price starts at $25. The price changes from time to time. But you can start off with the basic plan, which just has SharePoint on it, and I think it's less than £25. I'll also recommend that you buy the following books. Now, these are books that I actually, learned myself. A lovely lady called Penelope Coventry. I've met her a number of times, and she's written this book called SharePoint Step by Step. It goes up to, well, it started at SharePoint 2007, but this is a book that you definitely want to have. It tells you how to, open up a SharePoint site, create web apps, create applications. It's a great book to have, and it doesn't go into too much complicated level. It's called Step by Step because she teaches you step by step on what you need to do. So as a starter, I'd recommend, if you haven't got any experience in SharePoint, I'd recommend you get this book. Also, a great book if you want to go into coding is SharePoint Development by Chris Fox. This is a great book to have. He teaches you on C#, he teaches you on JavaScript, he teaches you on a lot of server and front-end code. It's a great book to have. And the good thing about this book is that he actually has examples of applications that he's built, and he's provided the code. So all you can do is just take his application, modernize the code once you've understood what's happening, and you can then begin to customize SharePoint up for your own use. I'll also recommend that you join SharePoint User Group UK. It's a great group to join. They do seminars, it's free. They do seminars all over the UK, in Cambridge, in London, and all you do is you just turn up and you meet professionals, you network. The networking is the idea. Network with these professionals, and they're very open and frank, and you can speak to them on LinkedIn and places like that. But that's a very crucial group to join. Another website is SharepointCommunity.net. Please join that group as well. Also plan and aspire to become SharePoint, a certified SharePoint individual. That makes the difference when you apply for a job. So you're competing with SharePoint professionals out there, and if you're certified, it would help you. I must say the exams are not easy. They're tricky, that's what I would like to say. So I showed you my gongs earlier on. I can tell you that for each of those exams, I repeated about 3 of them. And I'm not trying to scare you. That's how I am. I don't retain things as much as, how would I say? I'm not someone who does academics like that, but I'm sure a lot of people are. So it could be that you do the exam and you're flying straight off. So they are tricky, but please try and do them. Live, dream, and eat SharePoint. That's what I will say. As I said at the beginning of this, if you speak to me, I will tell you, some of my friends are here, all I go on about is SharePoint. I probably drive them mad about SharePoint, but SharePoint is all I go on about, and I think it just helps you in your career if you want to be a SharePoint professional. So we're going to do some case studies, and this might be a bit tricky. I hope it works, because the last time we tried to do it, it was a bit difficult. So I'm going to try my best. If it doesn't work, please forgive me, but we'll try. Can I just have a print? So we have a case study. We have 2 case studies, and I think I will try and remember them as we go along. I'm just going to try and get my iPad as well, so make it a bit easier. Okay, so we're going to start. You work for a telecoms firm as a web developer. Your manager has come to complain to you to say that he is having problems managing his team. He requires the following. He needs to share Word documents with his team members instead of emailing them around. His team members should have the ability to edit the documents and also not have 2 people edit it at the same time. He would also like to create a log of their personal development reviews so that he can refer to them from a centralized location. There are information champions in his team, i.e. the go-to people, and they're currently fed up having to meet staff members and explain as well as resolve issues. They only communicate by email, and often the email discussion is not shared with the team after the solution has been offered. Your manager has given you 25 minutes to develop a web solution for him, as team morale is pretty bad and you have an opportunity to shine in the company. So these are the typical situations that you're going to meet when you work with SharePoint. So how do we meet this business requirement? We're going to develop a SharePoint team site and call it Telecoms. We're going to use a document library to share those documents that were asked for. We're going to create a task list as well called PDR reviews. And we're going to create a discussion forum called Knowledge Base so that the users can have discussions instead of sending emails back and forth. So I'm going to now go to my SharePoint environment. I hope this runs. Okay. All right. So this is a SharePoint site. And if you subscribe to some Office 365, these are the kind of sites that you will be getting as well. So for anybody who wrote that down, please try and remind me, what was the first thing? We want to develop a SharePoint team site, and we want to call it Telecoms. That's the first thing our manager has asked us to do. So what do I do? Give me a second, because... All right, bear with me for a moment. Unless this screen is not as it's meant to be. Okay, I'm having a few problems on the site, but it's okay. Basically, what we should normally see, just where my mouse is, there should be some buttons there that allow me to add on the functionality, but they're missing. So normally, where my mouse is hovered, you would have a cartwheel there, but it's missing for some reason. I don't honestly know why, to be honest, but it is there. So the first thing we're going to do is add an app. We all know what apps are. So SharePoint site now, Microsoft have called it app. Actually, wrong thing, sorry. Okay, so I've gone into the sub-site section as opposed to add an app. My mistake on that. And sorry, I'm doing all of this on the fly, so. And we have this button here, which we can use to create a new application, a new part of SharePoint. So I'm clicking on new, and I'm creating a sub-site. So the main site is called SharePoint Lover. I'm going to create a sub-site to meet the business need. So I have a choice to create the details here. I'm going to call it Telecoms, as per the requirement. So I'll call it Telecoms Help Desk. And I'm just going to call it the Telecoms Help. Now, if you look here, this is called a URL. It's where your website addresses are. It's actually a uniform resource locator. And SharePoint will automatically populate this for you, but you have to add on your end. So this URL, I've called it the Telecoms. It can be anything with the right characters. Now, if I scroll down, you'll notice that you have these templates. Remember, I showed you templates, SharePoint templates. Do you remember the community, the teams? Yeah, exactly. So these are the kinds that you can choose from. But to make it nice and easy, I'm just going to choose team sites, which is the first one. Now, the other thing it's saying, you don't really need to, I'll explain what this is. It says use the same permission as a parent site. Now, the parent site is the site that supersedes the one that I'm about to create, and I want it to inherit the permissions of that site. In other words, everything that I can do on the inheriting site, I should be able to do it in this site. If I didn't want that to happen, in other words, if I wanted to close the door, then I would take this option called Use Unique Permissions.
When you say parent site, that is the original website.
Yes, that's correct, the root site. Okay, and some other options as well, but let's just keep it as it is. So all I do now is click on Create. And this will go away and start creating the SharePoint site for me. So we'll give it a few, it won't take long. Same working on it. Now in the past, before SharePoint, what you would have to have done is created, you would have, what I'm doing now, it would have taken you at least a good 4 days to do.
Is that on the server level? Because you're doing it
Yes.
online.
This is on, no, not on the server level, as in if I was coding this from scratch. If I was doing the coding on this. Yeah.
People without people who doesn't know the code.
Well, then it'll probably take you forever, I don't know. But you would have to now build things like this document library, this news feed, the calendar, all of those things. You'd have to write size of calendar, if calendar equals this, you know, a lot of code. But now I've just done something that has met a business requirement. So the first one was to, you know, build the site, which I've done. The second one is to use a document library with version enabled as well as check-in. Now, if you notice, there's already a document library there, but I want to create one again anyway. So I'm going to create another document library. And do you remember what a document library is? It's for keeping documents in, isn't it? So they've asked us to create a document library. This time around, I'm going to click on Add an App. And if you notice, you've got all of these apps here. These are the apps that are already configured with SharePoint. So you've got a document library, you've got custom list, you've got task list. These are applications that have already been configured. So I don't need to now go and put on my programming hat and build a document library.
These are the lists that are underneath, so you're not in the hierarchy.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, these are applications that have already been included. So they've asked me to make a document library. I don't need to go and code one because one already exists. All I'm doing is I'm choosing that document library and I'm going to customize it based on the business need. So it's simply, all we're going to do is click on it and then call it what we want. So they've asked us to create a document library. I'm trying to find out what the name was. Okay, I don't think we'll just call it team documents. Let's call it team documents. So I've met that second requirement now by creating a document library. And this is the document library that's been created. Sorry, this isn't the document library. Okay. Right, there it is. Yes, I must say that recently Microsoft has changed the whole display of this. So this is the new display. I didn't say that at the beginning. And yeah, I am getting used to it as well. So this is your document library. And you can, it's basically saying, you know, you've got options to upload documents. We're going to upload a couple of documents. I'm going to try and look for a document to upload. Let's have a look. Okay, so I've got 2 documents that I'm going to upload, just as an example. So you can look on the right hand, it says documents are being uploaded, and if you look, these documents are now uploaded. They're no longer hiding in my computer for only me to use. Now the other requirement was that these documents should have the ability of being checked in and checked out. So bear with me for a moment. Yes. So does anybody understand the concept of checking in and checking out documents? Do we all? Yes, no? Yeah? Okay. We all know. So when you go to a library, you check in a document when you take it out. Sorry, when you go to a library on the street, you take a book, you check it in and check it out. So it's the same concept with documents as well. So if I don't want anybody to work on this document, I basically check it out. And, but I have to activate the checkout capabilities first. So I'm going to...
But I thought that's the whole idea that maybe 2 or 3 people can work on the document.
That is true, but there might be a time where I don't want other people to work on that particular document. So in other words, I've just created it, and I don't want people to make changes to it. Yes, so you check it out yourself. And when you finish, you check it in. You can't, if you leave it as in a state of not checked out, checked in, then yes, people can work on it together. But supposing you don't want that to happen. So let's have a look and see. So I go into my library settings, and basically what I'm now going to do is switch on what we call versioning on this. Actually, bear with me for a moment. There it is. So we're going to switch on versioning, and it's simple. You just click on yes, and as you can see, oops, I missed it. So go back to versioning settings. And what this means now, it says required documents to be checked out before they can be edited. So this document library now means that, okay, if I upload a document there, that document now can be checked out and checked in. And the option of doing that is simply by clicking on the document that you want to do something to. You then have this 3 dot button here. You click on it and you have other options here. It's a bit long-winded, but here's what you do. You click on more, or you hover on more, and you check out or check in. I'll check this out. So that document is now checked out, and you can see there's a little green box there signifying it's checked out. Okay, let's move on. The other requirement is to create a task list called PDR reviews with attachments enabled. Now, this is something that you will be doing from time to time with SharePoint. Remember, I spoke about lists in SharePoint. So when it comes to storing some data, you have SharePoint lists, and you also have document libraries. To be honest, their functionality is, the technology behind it is almost the same. It's just that one of them is more versed to keeping documents than the other. So for documents, you keep them in a document library. For lists, you store data. So to make it easier for you, Excel, you store data in lists. Excel, you store data, rows of data, don't you? You wouldn't import or attach a document to an Excel list, would you? You would simply put your data in. Everybody uses Excel here. So it's the same thing with a SharePoint list. So we're going to create a SharePoint list. It shouldn't be long to create it. Same way how I created that document library. You go and click on Add an App. And as I said before, we are using the same applications that have already been developed. So you select Custom List because we want to create a list. And this one is more interesting to do. We're going to call it PDR Reviews. Now, the requirement said that he wants to create a log of their personal development issues. So does anybody here work in HR? Or ever worked in HR at all? Okay. Okay. So when you do PDR reviews, what sort of things are asked for? So performance. So I want to store performance. What I then do is basically, I start creating columns, just like you would do in Excel. It's the same thing, really and truly. So if you were putting in things in Excel, you would create it's a cell, isn't it? You'd enter data into a cell. But here in SharePoint, because it's more like a database, we're creating columns or fields. So there's two ways you can do it. You can do it from the front end by just clicking on, so I'll stop that so you can see it again. So you can click on edit this list, and if I basically click on add column, I have choices here: text, number, date, time, personal group. These are the column types, and there's about 15 of them, but the most usually used ones are kept here. So performance review would be text, wouldn't it? You wouldn't really put numbers. So we're going to choose text, and we're going to call it performance review. Okay, I'm sure we want the person's name. So, okay, so let's choose the column called name. Okay, the column that will store people's details, I beg your pardon. So we'll call that line manager. And what else can we put in there? Department, okay. Okay. Anything else, people?
Your grade level.
Grade level, okay. We'll keep that as the last one so we don't. Okay, I'm going to add one more. This one I'm going to call salary increase. And the reason why is I want to basically add a column that is of choice. So these are the other columns that you can add on. So I want it, basically I want to, it's what we call Boolean, so a choice. So I want to be able to choose yes or no as opposed to writing text. So salary increase, yes or no. Okay. And the default value will be no. So you click on there, and we have basically created our application. You might not think it is an application. You might think, well, it's just a list. But when this starts being populated with thousands of records, and if I now tell you that I can program this list to actually say, if the person is from this department, then don't give them a salary increase. I can actually do that to this list. It's what we call workflows. And that's where some development comes in. If you remember, I mentioned SharePoint Designer the last time. So this is where you would sort of create front-level applications that you can use for meeting business requirements like this. Let's move on. We've only got, I think it's, how many more minutes? Okay, right. I will be as quick as possible. So the last one was, we have information champions in the team to go to people. They're currently fed up having to meet staff members and explain to everyone how to resolve issues. So we want to create a discussion base rather than an email trail. So a discussion base is, we all use Facebook, as I keep on saying, a place that we can have discussions. So we're going to do that. So you don't have to now program a discussion base. We can choose one of the apps that we have and customize it that way. So if I just type discussion, I will find one. I believe I will. Okay, discussion board. So I've met that requirement already. All I now need to do is, well, call it a name. So knowledge base. And the team now can have discussions. So, if we go into the knowledge base, if you noticed, it says list, so things like that really are lists that look different. So I've met the requirement now. Members of a team can have discussions. They can now basically have discussions about the team. You know, I need help. Please help me. It's a question. I click on save, and this now appears as a discussion. You can note, if you notice, it has my discussions, and it's an unanswered question as well. Someone can then go, and let's pretend this was somebody else, and they will say, okay, reply. And this is me pretending as someone else, so how can I help you? Gosh. Right, so we've met the requirement of this team. And as I said, these are the sort of things that you will be asked to do in organizations. You will not necessarily have to code things from scratch. The first thing, we call these solutions out-of-the-box solutions. And that's a term that you hear, OOTB, out of the box. So when organizations ask us to develop things, they don't just say, oh, we want you to code everything. They might even do that. But what we first of all say is, have you made use of what you already have, the out-of-the-box solutions? Because you don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of building stuff when it already exists. So what I always say is, look what you can do out of a box. Customize it to the business requirement before you go on your own tangent coding. Yes, sir?
Since Office 365 comes with YAML, why would I use that? Why would I use this?
Okay. One, because this is easy to configure. So I've done this straight, you know, it's taken me, I think, 3 or 4 minutes to do. YAML would have taken me longer. And then secondly, there is an issue with sharing. So you've got to configure YAML. You've got to set up your account. There's, I think, external people, you can't share an account with external people. YAML is great to use, but this is just far easier to demonstrate. If I was going to do YAML, it would have taken me longer to do that. But yes, YAML is a great discussion app to use as well.
In some organization, they might want to avoid SharePoint because there are loads of applications, like for example Google, Facebook, they can actually create all these.
Yes.
For example, I've created a Facebook page designed for my organization where we can actually do all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it might not be a selling point inside the organization.
It might not be, but for an organization that uses Outlook, that uses the whole of the Office stack. So you've spoken about Facebook. Your Facebook doesn't interact with let me not say Active Directories, but it doesn't interact with you logging onto your computer. So I can take this account that I have here with the right settings, and when I log in, I'm using the same account to log in. I can share that I can share my Word documents. I can collaborate. I can do all of those things that you may not be able to do with Google. It depends on what the organization setup is. So remember I said at the beginning that most organizations use Microsoft products. Some people are Apple. Some people don't even want to use Microsoft. But the majority, unless anybody knows anything different, most organizations in the world are using Microsoft products. Most people are using PCs, despite the fact that Apple are making gains in that area. Yes, sir?
Is it the case, would it be my remit to give access to different staff members?
Yes. So that's something that you, so basically, I mean, it's not, for time purposes, I didn't add that, but it's something that we call sharing the site. So if you notice, there's a button that says shared with up there, and we can basically share the site if we wanted to, you know, so if you notice, if you look where I put my mouse on, it says give people access to this site. So that's what I would do. But I haven't got loads of people on this site to share with, so that's why I didn't do it. But I think there's a couple of users on there. There's a dev account, and there's another Yemi account there as well. I think. But okay, let's just say I can share it with myself and I can share it with the other account there. And the other thing I can do is give them particular permission levels. Now, I've shared this account, I've developed this application, but if I share it with everybody, it means they'll be able to develop it as well, which means they could delete the applications. So if I didn't want them to do that, I could just change their access and ensure that they only have read rights, things like that. So these are the permissions that you can do in SharePoint. You've got full control. I didn't cover all of that, but these are the permissions that you have. Full control, edit. There's some other ones that are there, but typically you would control the access to the site. Okay, there's another case study, but for time purposes, I'm not going to do it because we've actually run out of time and it's more complicated. But what I am going to say is if you are interested in, and the last time we had this group, last year, we were going to set up a SharePoint site and it didn't happen, but I can promise you it's going to happen. So if you want to be, yes. I've got some people from the last session that we did last year, but I can promise you this time it is going to happen. So at the end of this conference, if you've already put your details down somewhere, or if you want to, please let me know, and then I will personally contact you and add you onto the site that we're going to build so that we can encourage ourselves with SharePoint itself. Now, I'm good.
Also going to send us the slides.
Yes, well, the slides are going to be on that site. So that's where they're going to be. So I'm going to start taking questions from you now because I think I've covered the majority of it.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Well, mine is not a question. It's just like a contribution.
Yes.
For the purpose of those that are just going into SharePoint, you will find out that this that you're saying is not always what you always see in other organizations. What I mean is, this is actually more of SharePoint 2013 and Office 365. Now, if you go to SharePoint 2010, the procedure and the process is actually different from what he has displayed now. So don't expect that when I go to this SharePoint environment, this is what I've been taught, and this is what I would just go through. So you will find out that it's quite different. Like the wheel that is trying to look for that is not showing there now. In SharePoint 2010, it's not there. It's actually site action, then you do what you need to do. So you need to know the kind of environment you are before you know what to do. And also, you find out that even though it's SharePoint 2013, some organization might actually go a step further by branding the site. So you realize that most of these buttons are actually not where it is right now.
And he's absolutely correct. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Moye. You will find out, I mean, the examples I'm giving to you are on a beginner basis. So the site that I've given you is out of the box. This is how SharePoint is out of the box. No customization, no theming. I haven't even changed the color. This is the first thing that you will see. Now, you can customize SharePoint to the extent that you won't even know it looks like this. And some organizations do this as well. But the functionality really is still the same. It's really, most of the core functionality is there. It's really having a skin on top of something. Or like you paint your car a different color. The functionality will still be there. And he's right in the sense that, you know, when we started, we went through the history of SharePoint, remember that? And I told you that, you know, it's been around since 1997 up until now. So the various versions of SharePoint do look different. I mean, one of the projects I worked on was using SharePoint 2007, and that was in Network Rail. And, you know, that was me having to now learn back and go back to what, you know, something that I'd forgotten about. So yes, you will get instances like that, but at the same time, because of the time, it's almost impossible for me to cover all of that with you. What I'm trying to do is get your creative juices going so you can have an appreciation of SharePoint, go out and then discover it yourself, and then hopefully with the support that we give you on the SharePoint site itself, maybe that could help. One thing I'd like to add, I said this at the beginning, that Google is your friend. So a lot of information that you need is out there on Google. Yes, a lot of it. When I'm at work, I'm Googling. Because, like I was saying to Moyo earlier on when he came in, even the person who built SharePoint, as in the person who started it, does not know how it works anymore. It has become complicated and just gone bigger than what he thought it would be. So we're always learning, and I'd encourage you to do the same. Okay, next person, please.
I'll ask a question. For career opportunity,
yes.
Do Microsoft, do they actually train people? How often do they look for people who they can train, you know?
As far as I know, they don't.
Okay.
They don't try. As far as I know, they don't. There are courses that you can do. There are specialized courses that you can go to that will help you with the exams, but there isn't a SharePoint school from Microsoft. It's something that they just don't do. Maybe they will, because there have been a lot of changes in terms of SharePoint itself. Now, I told you that a lot of changes are happening with Office 365. They've actually got a new SharePoint director, and he's actually forward-thinking compared to who's been there for the last 10 years. So he's very forward-thinking, and I mean, that's why we've got a lot of this integration with Office 365. It's his ideas. So when I go to the SharePoint groups and conferences, I will raise this as well. Not with him personally, but in the groups that I'm a member of.
Just an easy one, really. Do you recommend any of the training providers that we currently have? I mean, I'm a business analyst already, so I would be interested in becoming a SharePoint BA, but I don't come from an IT background. I'm more of a business BA.
Okay. The majority of suppliers focus on the technical aspects. There's a company called is it Firebrand? Yes, Firebrand, yes. And I know they look at it from a technical perspective. Yes. Yeah. Then on that basis, I'll recommend you do what I did, which is self-study. I'll be honest with you, most of what I know now, I didn't get it from going to a school. I learned by myself. I bought the books, I studied for the exams, I Googled a lot, and I joined those communities. And I'm going to recommend you do the same thing as well. That's really what I did.
What you've done is actually a good thing. Something I've done I'm trying to develop my career in software testing now. I've done all that.
Okay.
But what is lacking is hands-on training. For most industry out there, they need people with experience.
Okay.
So where will I say I've got my experience comes from? Reading books and all the stuff.
Yeah.
But the real thing is hands-on. 3 years experience, that's what they need, or 2 years. But I haven't got that. Though I've read the books, passed the exam. So they need somebody with experience.
So what I would recommend you do is something that I've done as well. Volunteer your services and your time. There are organizations, charities are looking for people to help them with SharePoint. We here in Jesus House are, on our project, we are looking for people that will volunteer on an unpaid basis and help. And that will, I don't think it's something that you should laugh at, because, it's the infrastructure that you have in Jesus House here, and I say this, is comparable to what you have on a lot of organizations out there. So we have a server room, and I'm going to be biased about this, but I can tell you that most of what we have here is almost the same as what you will meet, is about 95% the same as what you will meet out in the corporate world. So if you want to volunteer in an organization like this, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, like I said, I believe there's a form or something going around where everybody can leave their details on. So please fill out your details.
Yeah, there is. I'm not sure if you got the form, the feedback form.
Yes.
Yes. Put your details.
Yes. We will. In fact, the test manager came. He came in.
Just put your
yes.
details that you're interested.
Yes.
And then I'll
So he's part of that project.
Yeah.
Yes. So Nana's part of that project. And I'm sure they'll have a few stories to tell you about the SharePoint project itself. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So I just want to contribute more on the training part.
Yes.
I think it's always good if you, even though it's expensive, it's always good if you at least get the formal training from these training providers, because they would probably give you the basic basic information you need to get about SharePoint. Then you can now go ahead and start doing your own hands-on. Like he said, you can now have your own server, start playing with it. Because if you don't understand the basics, no matter what you read, you won't get it right. And most of these training providers, really, what they do is, well, for me, that's my own personal observation or personal experience, is just PowerPoint. But they would explain the basics to you. So you understand like what it did, you understand what SharePoint is all about, you understand the concept of SharePoint. Then you can now say, okay, let me now take it further. Let me now get my own personal server. I mean, not everybody would read from the beginning, go online and understand. But from a personal experience, I think it's always good to take the pain, do the normal training. Most times it's 3 days to 5 days max. Then you can now build it from there.
Which is true, Mario, but I'd like to also add, from what I've seen as well, I mean, and it's just that the person's gone. I know somebody who was, we recommended that, they do a lot of self-study. A couple of, not just one person, a couple of people. And that has worked for them without having to go to a training school. What I'd like to add is that I don't think you can learn everything from a training school, because SharePoint is so massive. In fact, the people who train you are probably still learning as well. So the training, if you can afford it, do it. If you've got a company sponsoring you, that sort of thing, by all means go and do it. If you can't, please don't feel discouraged. I mean, I'm a living example of someone who learnt, has gone to training school, but most of my knowledge has been from networking with people, speaking with people, learning about it, having a passion for it as well. That's something I'm going to say. Have a passion for it. Please don't leave this place and just say, oh, there's this bald-headed guy going on for about 2.5 hours. Be passionate about it. Live and breathe, the subject, and you will be amazed how, in about a few months, you'll be standing here doing a SharePoint presentation like this. So.
Thank you very much. Can we all appreciate Mr. Yemi?